All right, you guys, we have, well, hello to everyone out there, but we're going to wait a minute as everyone else starts to come in. We'll give everyone else like 2 or 3 more minutes.
Hey, Zesty. Hey, Sarah. What's up?
Hi, Nikki. I had your wife this morning on my Zoom.
I heard.
The Haas day.
It's a family affair.
The best kind of day.
Yeah. I was with Fox in the other room, like reading a book, like.
You were? Yeah. It was actually fun. It was cool.
She loved it.
Different things to talk about. She's a powerhouse.
Yeah. She sure is. Yeah. She's cool. Yeah, and I get that, like, the good news is, like, I get that webinar talk every day about my skin. And like, yeah, which is great. I mean, I don't pay attention because it's like she'll just give me a whole facial situation every night. Simon knows too, like if we go on vacation or something together, it's like all the masks and stuff come out. It's great.
I'm coming next time. I've just started my regime. I'm a little late in the game.
She's really good at it.
I don't know. Anyways. Although I'm looking
at
this
how long ago does this shoot seem like?
I mean, I was looking at that going, whatever the regime is, it's not working.
Oh, stop it. I was just thinking, I remember being at my desk. I wish Douglas was on our call.
I know.
And I was agonizing, and it was such a crazy moment. And I remember jumping on with Zesty on the phone, and I don't know, so nice.
Never last minute, never.
Yeah, exactly. But these pictures, they stand the test of time, even though it's only, what, 7 years? Still 7 years.
They're so cool. I forgot that it's McDonald's on the work.
I know.
Pretty awesome.
I had too until I looked at the pictures again.
Of course, Douglas yelled at me yesterday for still not putting the stripper picture on the cover. He's like, you don't want to offend people, but I do.
That was fun.
It was a fun day.
That was a fun shoot.
Yeah, it seems like 2 years ago and 20 years ago at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, even if you say 7, that seems so not that long ago, you know?
I know.
Like, so much has changed since then, but. Yeah.
Can you guys hear me okay? No problem, because I have the earphones in. I just want to make sure there's no distraction, but it's okay?
Yeah,
totally.
Totally. Okay. All right, I think we should start this. There's plenty of people here to watch, which is a great thing. So I'm gonna, on the East Coast, I'm gonna welcome everyone to a chilly Friday evening, and to everyone else on the West Coast where it looks sort of more brighter and sunnier. Congratulations compared to what's going on. Tonight, I think it's a wonderful thing because we're gonna be able to chat and tell stories about culture, arts, design, making things, using their hands with the Haas Brothers, with Niki and Simon, and how they developed part of their career. Why do certain things matter, or process, or how they get things done. And with what we've done with Sarah Harrelson, with Cultured Magazine, and we've all sort of grown together, been together, and helped create community over time, which I think is a really wonderful thing, and maybe even needed more now than it has been in the past. That we're always like stronger together, especially when we can do amazing things and get it out to people. So from there, I would like to give it over to Sarah to talk. But one last thing. Oh, if you guys have questions, please just put them in the questions and answers, and we'll try to get to them at the end of the call. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Zesty. And I think that's a really important point, and something really nice to start on is community. You know, I always think back to about 9.5 years ago when I sat down with you, Zesty, and said, I want to start this magazine. And I don't even think I finished my sentence, and you said, I'll buy an ad. So, you know, I think community is important, and I think it's something that we've all sort of, you know, really revisited during this, you know, incredibly challenging time for all of us, probably all for very different reasons. Niki and Simon, I think you were the first piece of collectible design that I purchased. I have had the privilege of watching your career sort of, you know, front and center. And I look back at these pictures that we did for the cover in 2014, and you know, it's amazing. And I look at this work that's also just, you know, incredible. And I remember going to your studio and having you tell me sort of how you place each hex piece. And, you know, it's incredible. So I'm just going to sort of start. Zesty and I are going to tag team a bit with the questions and obviously come at it at a different way. But I really wanted to start as we're on deadline for our February issue. And our February issue is sort of looking at the roles that family play in creativity, frankly. and examining these relationships. And so it's sort of fitting that we're having this talk today. And not only am I, so interested in you guys as siblings, but I'd also love to hear a bit about the relationship with your dad. So sort of a big question to launch us, but.
Yeah, I mean, when we were kids, our dad was, when we were really young, was a carpenter and then a stone carver and a stonemason later. And I remember he built furniture, rocking chairs and some other outdoor furniture stuff. And we would go to Wimberley, which is outside of Austin, in the country in Texas. There was a big wood shop there that he would use to make the stuff. And we would just, dick around in that big wood shop and just make all kinds of stuff. We would sand parts of his furniture and make boxes for CDs, because you needed boxes for CDs back then. And
CD boxes.
Yeah, and then we, probably by the time we were 12, 13, we're working for him, doing carving, doing stone stuff, and our sculptural language came so directly from him, and he taught us so fully in the way that he did it, that now when he sculpts stuff for us, so like what you're looking at now is some drawings that we did. Our father sculpted the frames. We can sit with our dad for about 15 seconds and have a conversation about the frame, and we've reached a lot of detail super quickly because the conversation is one that's been going on for 20 years, So like if you're talking sculpture with him, it's like, Simon and I too, right? Being twin brothers, like if we're working next to each other and you make a motion or a sound or something, you know exactly what that other person is thinking. So it's just like a very fluid, super easy way to do it. And he's, when it comes to sculpture, is our mentor. He's the first person that taught us how to do it. So it's just a super fluid, happy, productive, perfect relationship in that way when it's, creatively. So it's really, it's great. He's a really sweet dude too. So it's easy to work with him,
And he comes in the studio still every day?
Not these days, no. We're also sort of under construction. I'm at the studio right now, and it's like not conducive to that. But he was there all the time. Especially earlier on, he was like always there with us. And he has his own studio at his house where he'll carve things for us. But he's just a big piece of it no matter what. And he, I feel like a lot of our aesthetic, a lot of the humor in our work, actually we inherited from him, because even now, I just went and saw this chicken coop that he built for somebody. And there's little like clever hooks and latches and things, and just kind of absurd but really beautifully thought out details in spots where you wouldn't expect them. And I was thinking, oh wow, like his way of building is so innately funny and creative. And like it was interesting to recognize that in his, after this many years, just to see it again in his own work, and be like, wow, that's kind of where we got it.
That like idea of like making something functional, intimate and funny and cute, and he like, you go to their house too, our mom too, they're both like obsessive about material application and the way every little corner of the house looks, and it's packed with things. It's not like obsessive in the way you might think, where it's like this like clean box and everything's perfect. It's like everything's perfect in a completely mad kind of way. There's like so much stuff, and every little corner of a wall is covered with like a butterfly wing, tea tray, or there's a million little doll heads in a corner, or there's like every little handle is like handmade and carved and has like the same kind of detail that our frames might have on them. So it's cool. It's like literally like a fabricated fantasy from the ground up. And I think like that's something special that we inherited from our parents, is that life is sort of like one big fantasy, and you're sort of like building your reality almost like it's a cartoon around you that you're living in, which is pretty cool. It's like a fun skill to inherit from your family. So
I guess the next image, or the image you guys see of the hex table with the one leg up, and it looks like a dog leg, I guess, or maybe some other creature would be a really good example of that, of everything you guys were talking about. And
I mean,
also that you guys went to the extent to hex underneath the table where most people can't see, to go to the extreme. And maybe there's a reason why you had to take it that far, or we could start to get into the science or the patterns or structure as well.
Well, like if you, like imagine you're crawling under that table, or you're a kid, right? Like a kid is going to see the underside of that table 100%. And it's like, if you go underneath it and you see like a steel plate or something where the hex ends, you break the fantasy. It's sort of like being in like a 3D, you have like a 3D headset on and you're talking to a person and you're getting into it and it feels real. And then all of a sudden they like, you get some interference or something, you break the fantasy immediately. So it's just like, you can't ignore the unseen spots, or you haven't dedicated fully to the experience, I guess, you know? I don't know.
We're also like, I'm a masochist when it comes to materials. And I like, choosing hexagons anyway is kind of a difficult way to wrap something around a surface like that. So to ignore the bottom would be just like, it would be lazy, which I don't like. And we're not about efficiency in design. So yeah, it would make sense to remove a little bit of the weight if you're talking about like trying to mass produce something and take that off the bottom. But that's not what we're doing. We want to make a fully realized object. And that comes into play with the leg that's useless too. We're taking all that time to make a useless leg. And like, I don't know, does it suggest that it's walking, or like you said, a dog, maybe it's peeing? Both are absurd and they're both kind of funny. So it's about this interplay of like obsessive making and then also keeping it light by like making a joke.
How much time does it take you to make something like this?
Each of those tiles takes 20 minutes to just hand form.
Show everybody how big those tiles actually are.
They're about that big.
Yeah, and how long?
This table took like 6 or 7 of us full-time, 6 or 7 months, I think, just to apply the, and that's just to like put it on, right? And then we have to take it to a polisher and it has to be like ground down, and then it's like a whole, and then you have to do replacements. And this was a serious undertaking. This thing. You know?
Well, I think it's interesting that you took a part that was once a luxury before the Industrial Revolution and took the industrialized part and put it back into a scale of luxury and brought beauty to it in a way that people wouldn't expect. And I think that's an amazing quality within a lot of your work is maybe you're calling that humor, but that juxtaposition of material choice, I think, had a lot to do with the success of the hex work.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Well, I also just think like you take like where, like the type of design that we grew up around, like that you sort of idolize. And I think like a big failure of like 90s, early 2000s architecture and design is like a lack of intimacy. The spaces are over generous. The materials aren't like glitzy. It's like was kind of all about saying subdued. And, you know, I think like for us just to in some times, like in some instances, like over dedicate just made it feel like something special. And you think about like a market like high-end collectible design. And I think just for us, it was like, we have to give it everything we got because it's such a privilege to be inside of that market and to be able to be having these conversations that it's like, the material has to be as good as it can be. The time we spend on it can't in any way be lazy. It has to be totally dedicated. And we have to be like reaching for abstract value too. It can't just be something that's physical and then that's it. It needs to be more. So I think it's like the material gave us an opportunity to like pour more of ourselves into it so that it felt like we were, you know, deserved to be in the market that we were starting to be a part of, you know?
So as we see the beasts in the background, I think the print of maybe where maybe beasts got inspired from something like this, maybe not, or the idea, maybe we could combine the two, or maybe you guys could tell the story of what's going on here and the influence also going back to childhood, I think is where it came from.
Yeah, this print was based on a documentary, not a documentary, it's a nature movie called Animals Are Beautiful People from the 70s. And it was, I mean, when we were kids, we thought it was a nature documentary, but it was kind of a fabricated show. So there is a scene in it where it shows animals who've eaten the marula fruit, which fell off a tree and fermented and becomes alcohol. So all the animals get drunk. And it shows like lions hanging out with animals that they would usually be eating and kind of enjoying each other. And I think we just really loved that idea. And this was a wallpaper that we did about just about animals hanging out that shouldn't have been hanging out together. And they're sort of partying at the bottom of this forest. And that's basically where it came from.
It's just like it's like the idea of unity that you know, and then it's the same in humans. Like humans are all very different from each other, but if you create a reason for celebration that everyone gets together, you know, they can forget their differences. And the funny thing is, so we go to South Africa where this myth is from, the marula fruit, and we tell a couple people there about, oh, like animals are beautiful people. There's this awesome scene. Everybody there knows about it, and they're all laughing. They're like chuckling at us because there's a liqueur there called Amarula, and they're like, you know, Amarula invented that story 100 years ago. It's just absolutely not true. It's like a fabricated myth, and not only is it a myth, it's like early advertisement, basically. Mm-hmm. And you know, at first I think it was kind of like, bummer, that sucks. You know, like we got so into an ad campaign basically, and not only that, like an antiquated old ad campaign, but then I think that it's still a story, and eventually you come around to the idea that like there's so much power in a story. There's so much power, again, just coming back to fantasy, that like someone from 100 and something years ago can invent a story about a liquor, and that it can affect 6 and 7 year old boys, you know, in the 90s, and change the way that they think about the world. Mm-hmm. It's kind of beautiful. Mm-hmm. And also like just that this story morphed and changed so much, and then eventually became an art piece by us that now other people will see and then hear the story. And it's kind of like, I don't know, it was a big moment of being like, you're not really in control of the things that you create, but if you put them out there with like good intention, that they can become something really beautiful. I think it was kind of cool. And then it got us, you know, closer with, we found a beaded Amarula bottle in this fair in South Africa when we went with you, Zesty. And we're like, Amarula, that's the marula fruit. That's like the one. And then, you know, we met the women that beaded it. And then that, you know that story from there. It ended up becoming like a long-term collaboration with a bunch of women there in South Africa. And it's like, in a sense, you could point back to that ad campaign from 1860, you know what I mean? That like inspired us to then in the, you know.
Make a black light poster.
Yeah, it's like a funny line to kind of draw. Is that
actually, you know, we grew up going to Spencer's Gifts, like in Austin. I know they were everywhere, but there wasn't that much to do in Austin. So we'd go to this mall, and like, I loved going into the night area in Spencer's. And so it was kind of based on a blacklight poster from there. So it has a tinge of like Austin stoner art.
Well, you know that. Well, the next picture with part of the rug is part of the same story, right?
Yeah. Yes, totally.
And I was thinking, sorry to interrupt for a second, but because you touched on it, and you touched on the, you know, the power of a story and the power of storytelling, and these works sort of having a lives of their own. I think if you can for a second now sort of talk a little bit about the Afriques and working with those women. I don't know if that's a story that everybody knows, but I think, you know, if you could touch on it for a little bit before we jump to the next, that would be awesome.
Yeah, well, so Simon and I, Evan and Zesty, you know, invited us to go to South Africa to talk at the Guild Fair. Southern Guild was having, I think there was their first design and art fair. So we all traveled there, and, you know, we like went on a safari and did all this other stuff. It was really cool, but it's like, you know, South Africa is different than LA and New York. And it's, you know, it was like a new experience for us. And we ended up just going to like get some tourist stuff to bring back home. And we went to this fair, and there were a bunch of beaded objects, and they were really cool, and they were cheap, right? Oh, I actually have one. 1 second.
Yeah. And one of them was the amarula fruit, or the amarula bottle. Oh yeah, there's one.
Wow.
So like this was like $60. And I don't know if you can see, but there's like so many little beads on it.
So I think we noticed like that they're spending hours and hours and hours and hours on something and making animals, which like those two things are already very similar to our work, and they're very special objects. Each one's super personal to whoever beaded it, and we just felt like our work and their work was almost in the same category. And so we just asked if they were interested in working together, and they were. And that sparked a many years long, still happening collaboration. I don't think we ever really understood just how far and deep that would go, but it really changed our whole practice and introduced us to using colors and beads, which I'm now obsessed with. Yeah,
there you go.
You know, it's like these women were making like, I don't know, like $2,000 a year making this kind of stuff. And we were just sort of going, we're doing the same thing, but because, you know, we're like young white men from America, we have like a whole different platform than they do. And it's like, we can have like a real job. And I mean, so when we asked them to work with us, the whole idea was that it was going to be a profit share. And it worked out beautifully. It was great for all of us because it's like we ended up with fabrication. It was like really excellent for us and like totally reasonable to profit share. And they ended up making a lot more money than I think they'd ever thought they could make. And like they also, I mean, all the Afriques are a collaboration, truly. Like I don't know if you saw the sketch before, but it's like it's pretty, you know, it's not very detailed. That's what they were delivered. Here, you know, here's a sketch, go. And then like you end up with this. So it's like, there's a lot of room for interpretation in that. And then some of the sketches got a lot more detailed, some were less. And that was kind of the whole point. It was like, we're two very different types of people from very different places, but we're actually not, because we share this obsessive, meticulous material application in our daily life, which on some level, if you're a maker, you meet other makers that work in really meticulous craft, and you have so much in common already just because of your demeanor, your ability to sort of dive into a material and like give yourself to it. There's a beauty in it. And then it was just like, let's make stuff together where it's like we all get to express. And I think that was kind of the point, was trying to create like equal footing. Being like, let's share in the profit together, and let's also all express it together. And let's not make this like a we're telling you what to do kind of situation, because we're in that position, but it's hard to say why we're in that position. Like, is it because where we grew up and where we're from and what was afforded us and, you know, how we look and like, you know, what sex we are and blah, 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 blah. I don't know if it's that simple, but it could be. We don't know for sure. And that was kind of the whole idea. It was like, let's make an equal relationship and make work that's like all of us putting everything we got into it. And, you know, it's like, it just created a venue. I think all of us felt really safe to make whatever we wanted to make. And that's what's cool about it. It wasn't like no one was afraid to make something. I don't know if that makes sense. It wasn't like, that's not right. That's not polished perfect. This isn't the way it should be. It's like, was just go for it. Make something fucking cool. Let's all do it together. And it's like, I think we all really nailed it. And this was a crazy, I mean, Zesty and Evan took a huge chance, right? Because here, we're putting this in a design fair. I mean, you're looking at what we showed at Design Miami. And let's be honest, it's like, it's just not design. Like, what is it? There's a chair, right? And like a bench. And I think rightfully so, you know, the auditors came through and they're like, this isn't design. There was like a big thing. And it's like, all of us had invested tons of money. And it was like, if this doesn't sell and we can't show it, then like the project can't keep going. And this is going to crush people back in South Africa, because then they're going to like get to keep. It felt like a very big deal. Ultimately, we got to show it because we called the mushrooms like umbrellas or something. And all the other stuff was toys. Zesty, wasn't it? Something like that? I can't remember.
Yeah, Design Miami went to town on us and said, you know, and so we started to question, like, well, it always brings up the question that we're always trying to solve the answer to that has no answer. You know, are the animals a design object, or are they a piece of sculpture? Or is there a difference?
Ultimately, it doesn't really matter. And I think for us, it was just like, we want this stuff to sell so we can keep this project going, so that like we can keep, you know, we can keep expressing, we can keep creating like an outlet and for all of us, and that we can, you know, keep it rolling, because we wouldn't get to keep doing it if it doesn't. And then, you know, Rodman Premack was our huge savior in that, our total advocate, I think, helped push it through. I mean, I don't know all the details, honestly, because Evan and Zesty were taking care of it. But like, luckily it got to show, and it was fucking awesome, you know, like, and we're still getting to do it today, which is great, you know.
And then you guys took it a bit further, or Simon actually took it really further with the idea of the science of how patterns are made. I think this is what started to maybe further down that path, or going deeper, right?
Yeah. So when we were in Cape Town, the women we were working with taught me how to bead, and I naturally just kind of go for trying to work out systems for making, and I really like iterative making, and I kind of have like a more of a computer programmy kind of a bent in general when I approach making stuff. And I wanted to figure out a rules-based system for beadwork. So I didn't know I cared about beads until we went to Cape Town. Then I started doing them, and I realized, oh, every bead is a unit. They're strung on sequentially, and they have distinct colors, which means I can write rules for them and sort of program them. And they're perfect for it because they're also spheres, and spheres pack nicely, and that lets you build shapes, which is really cool. So, I mean, now I'm so far removed from the origin of it that I almost don't even understand this drawing, but this was just me sort of seeing what the different colors there represent the different directions string could go to go into a new bead while you're stringing on beads. And so that was me sort of trying to unwrap it. It's gotten a lot more succinct now, but I do make shapes with, I write little lines of code and make shapes using those.
Isn't that one of the great things about what you guys are able to do and how it's grown, that like we're talking about where something started, and now you're saying how it's developed or where it's getting past to grow into something more, or to the next level of whatever it will turn into. I think also, since we started to tell the story, this, you know, for the women in South Africa particularly, maybe this was the crowning moment of something they never imagined that would have actually happened, which you guys actually started to call the Haas sisters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they called themselves the Haas sisters, and we were like, oh, that's awesome, because we're the Haas Brothers. And this was a really proud moment for all of us to be at the Cooper Hewitt. And I think it sort of points to, even though these objects weren't technically functional in like a furniture kind of a way, they did serve they had a function, a social function, and like a personal function that was stronger than most design objects we've ever made. And that was, I think, just to, you know, this allowed an experience of having objects in a museum for some women who probably never would have expected to see that happen. You know, to us, that was one of the most beautiful moments ever. And I thought this was a really cool show. Literally, like, completely useless design objects. And we were excited to see these in the Cooper Hewitt also, because it is a design focused museum. But, you know, also interestingly, it's the most craft heavy objects we've ever made, and craft tends to fall more on the design spectrum, end of the spectrum. So I still have a hard time describing what these things are. And when I look at them, I think, oh, there's all these like different dichotomies kind of wrapped into them.
And maybe also then you got to do the opposite. You got to bring these women to your world, right? And expose them to something else, to maybe they could go back and then bring influence in a different way, that there's more out there. So it's more than growing with the actual object, it's growing with humans, right? And and it was through the handwork that all this exchange happened, and then the fun, the hard part, creating to get to today.
Yeah, Zesty, you and Evan got us all tickets to The Color Purple, and we all went to on Broadway, which was like an awesome play to see with like 5 women from Kailicha. It was cool. It was just like a fun experience. I think New York is like, you see it in film and stuff all the time, and to like actually, I remember the first time I came to New York, it's so different than what you expect, but it's also exactly the way it looks on every movie you've seen, like Coming to America or something, you know, where it's like very vivid, or Crocodile Dundee, but it's also completely something else. It was cool to watch someone else experience that for sure, you know, but yeah, anyway, it's cool. It's really fun.
Maybe carrying on with that, since we have animals, or sort of animals in this picture, beasts, we should actually get into the beasts, because maybe from the beasts, Afriques were derived, or somehow they merge or morph together.
Beast came first, right?
They did.
Beast came first, yeah.
Beast came first.
The beaded ones are the first time that we put faces on something, but the beasts actually were kind of an exercise in, since we grew up around taxidermy, we were really used to it. Since we grew up in Texas, we were used to taxidermy. And we had it in our house also. And Niki found this fur, this Icelandic sheepskin, when he was in Iceland, that is just beautiful, and we wanted to use it. And I had been reading about the uncanny valley, which in robotics is like, the more a robot looks like a person, the scarier it gets. And we were talking about it, and we were like, does that apply to taxidermy also? Like, maybe if you take the face off of it and give it more gesture and make it really cute, it actually becomes, you know, you can have more empathy for that object. And that's sort of where these started.
I think also like kind of just like Simon is very accurate, very accurate painter, or he can draw something exactly the way that it looks, and he can really get someone's vibe and attitude across perfectly. I'm very crude in that way, like I don't have that skill. And so, you know, it was sort of something that like the ability to do a portrait of like a friend or someone that you really care about. This was something that like I could do, that Simon and I could do together, where these are really crude portraits in a sense. It's like horns and a tongue, and it's actually not even human. It's just like an attitude or a vibe. So that's like to take that starting place of like the uncanny valley, using for playing with taxidermy, and then also like, you know, who is like, what is this attitude and who is this person? And it could be many friends mixed together, or many people you care about mixed together, but that they are supposed to convey like a feeling, or at least like an emotional value that someone might portray in as few pieces as possible. So I guess the beasts are like really character portraits of people, whereas like the Afriques are touching something not more profound, but a little bit harder to reach for, maybe touching something closer to spirituality. So like that's why that's why the Afriques ended up having like faces and eyes and things, but these like very like, I don't know. For me, the Afriques were like portraits of gods or something, and the beasts were portraits of friends. The beasts were more intimate, but the Afriques were like larger questions that we can't answer or something. But then they're just like jokes at the same time. Like, who knows? I don't know.
Can you share some of their names?
Oh my God, I don't remember them because we have so many of them.
Just a few, just a few.
Yeah. Anna Nicole was like our first one. I was really proud of. Simon, you came up. We had a big white, like a big blonde bench, and we named it Anna Nicole.
It wasn't a pun, but like, I'm a big fan of Anna Nicole.
Yeah, that wasn't a pun. Like one of my favorites ever was like, I'm a big ice hockey player, and Simon came up with this one. Like there's this goalie, Martin Brodeur, is like one of my favorites of all time. And Simon came up with Fartan Odeur, which I think is so good. So it's like, it's usually like, you know, it's like pop culture icons and stuff, and it's always just like a dumb pun on that person's name. And we'll do it because art and high-end design has a bit of inaccessibility as a viewer. And if you just give it a dumb name, first of all, it makes that person engage in it because it's like a joke. They've already like committed some part of themselves to it. And also it diffuses that like higher than the viewer vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you feel like you're allowed to get in it and touch it and be a part of it. You know?
When we were first getting into this, we were, you know, more on the functional design end. And there, if you look at like paint chips, they say like Zephyr or something, or like, you know, they all have very lofty, really boring, strange names. And I think we just wanted to go the opposite and go like no pretension there and make a joke every time. And so we sit around now with Johnny, who works with us and is one of our best friends, and we just come up with like dumb names, and as soon as one of us laughs, we're like, okay, that's it, and then it sticks.
That's really awesome. It's super cool because it's a really adding humor. You know, humor is a great thing, or the word fun that you guys mention quite often, and it's not something that we hear all the time either. And most in the body of work of artists, you know, it's supposed to be more serious sometimes, or it's about a specific idea. And we've talked about so many ideas already. It's incredible. And maybe that's also what's interesting is the storytelling, the fun, the humor, the names, the idea to take chance with material that you guys don't know, which seems to be the case more often than not, or that develops into a series to have to challenge yourselves. And then Sarah and I were both talking, and one of the things that we did talk about was the sex room and doing the sex room and why you did it. And how come it was important, and what you guys think about it today, or it's more of a story as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's crazy that you guys showed that at Design Miami. I think it was pretty bold that you chose to do that. So that's pretty cool. But we were talking about design objects and like functionality, and I think it came up like, does that mean like a sex toy, for example, is a functional object? And is that how it started, Niki? We were just sort of talking about sex in our work, and
it was like so many different things were going on. And I just think that I think maybe the main thing that sparked it was like, we were sort of starting to understand that with a platform, in any realm, you have some level of social responsibility, even if it's just like in an interview, or if you're talking about your life or whatever. And I think that we were just like, okay, like this is part of our DNA now. Like we need to say something with the work that we're making. And, you know, at that particular time in our lives, I think it's just, we were talking about sexual liberty. And so this is really this is our work addressing sexual liberty. And I think that like we'd grown up in a pretty bro-y system, you know, in Texas. I played ice hockey, you know, there's like Hollywood can be pretty bro-y. Mm-hmm. And I think it was like, part of it was just like, we wanted people to go inside this room, and the idea is that you go in by yourself and that you could experience many different sexual things. You could jiggle some balls, you could finger a vagina, you could watch a man turn around in circles, this guy, John Pope, who was like my ice hockey teammate that Simon filmed, or you could watch a girl naked, but it wasn't like pornography. It was just sort of a little bit voyeuristic, maybe. That might be the only sort of sexual vibe it had to it. Mm-hmm. But the idea is that you could go in and experience different sexual vibes in a very non-confrontational way. It wasn't about shock. I know it seems like it was about shock. It really wasn't from our perspective. It was more like creating experience and allowing it to happen, but in a way where...
Those are funny, the forms there, like the curtain and those lamps, they're more Caligula kind of funny than they are shocking and like, you know.
Right. Oh, it's a joke. I mean, also like the Africs are just like pop candy to look at, but they get a lot deeper if you decide to go down that path. So I think our idea was like, for me as a straight guy, I could go in this room and I could jiggle some balls and be like, that was hot. Or like, you know, there's like a drawing of John Pope. I mean, John Pope, I think anybody that went into that sex room came out going like, John Pope is the sexiest person on earth. It doesn't matter if you're straight or not.
So part of it was that, you know, in art in general, women are well, in the world, and then in very much in art too, women are objectified constantly, and men, you know, it's still very off limits to have a penis on something, or men are just like off limits for objectification. And I wanted to really objectify the guys in this work, so that John Pope was the star of that. He was much more sexualized, I think, than Zumi was the other person who this room was about. We're talking as though everyone's seen what's inside, and no, I don't think anyone really has, because it's
right. I think ultimately the idea is that like starting to understand someone else's perspective starts with empathy, and empathy comes from experience, or some sort of at least like awareness of someone else's reality. And that was kind of the point. Look, sample all the realities. Now you know how someone else feels and why they might feel that way. So maybe you can understand why they decide to choose that in their life, or why they are that way, you know? That was really the whole idea. It was like you could go in and be like, okay, if you were uncomfortable with some level of sexuality before, you could come out and be like, I've cleansed myself of whatever hang up I had about that.
Or so, like maybe you noticed that you're uncomfortable about something specific and you leave wondering why. It's more like, I think we like our objects to make people ask questions of themselves, or just like have like an, oh, what's this? I'm having it, just to like nudge them a little bit out of their, wherever they are.
I think it also helped people, make them feel comfortable and that their thoughts are okay. Mm-hmm. And this, you know, some of the stories that we were entitled to hear were rather incredible. Mm-hmm. You know, and it was great that people opened up to us when we showed this piece twice. And it was really amazing to hear how we could bring thoughts out of people that they all of a sudden felt comfortable maybe saying something, admitting something, whatever it was, or they felt better about themselves, which is, I think, a real incredible power to have. Cool. To be able to do that, as much as all these other things are sort of fun and everything, you really affected people in a certain way. I mean, obviously there were people that didn't like it as well, but the people that opened up about it for what you guys were talking about was incredible.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and if you didn't like it, that's cool.
Leaving the room.
Yeah, like no judgment. And again, it's just funny shit, and it has dumb names, and it's like pink and crazy colors and all that. And it's like funny. And if you don't like it, that's fine. Skip it, you know? Mm-hmm. And if you do like it, cool, we can talk about it with you. And that's great. Some people would go in and spend like an hour. Some people would spend like 30 seconds and be like, I'm over it. You know? That's what's cool.
Most people left like laughing or smiling. And I think that was a really good sign. And like, really, that's a cooler reaction. Then, you know, I want someone to have fun and enjoy themselves more than I want like a critical applause.
Right. Agreed.
Zesty, you got a lot of resistance with this, right?
Yeah, it seems to go in line with showing the Haas Brothers work. It wasn't the first time. I think we made the art world angry, and I think we made the design world angry from where we showed it. And I think it, but it set the right point. I mean, it's not about having fear or pushing the boundaries because we can. It was the right idea for why we took on to show the Haas Brothers and why you guys wanted to make this. It made sense for who you were and what it was for that moment of time. And so Evan and I have always tried to meet those challenges if we can, to bring it publicly to a public or the public, and to keep presenting. But one of the other things that happened with this piece is the leather, the technique that was created because of the leather, right? Which turned into an incredible thing, which of course we had never seen before. And here is the leather that was on the vagina, but now it's on a sofa.
I think these are called like Raisin Arizona and Raisin Det or something like that.
That's
Raisin
exactly
is my favorite.
Yeah.
But yeah, this leather is another example of like my obsessive tendencies with the material. And we wanted to replicate, like, initially it was about testicles, like how do you get that texture, but then there's a lot of things that have that texture, prunes, whatever, it doesn't really matter. but we blew up a balloon and glued leather to the balloon and then popped it, and it shrinks like that. And then we just derived a pattern from that we can sew. You can stitch leather onto a shrinking backing, or like even swimwear fabric, if it starts out stretched, will shrink. And that's what we did on that curtain, was swimwear fabric on a stretcher bar, hand sewn in that pattern, and then you cut the whole thing and it shrinks down, and it takes forever, but it's really pretty. And that's how this was made.
We're starting to run out of time, and some people are raising their hands, and the people that are raising their hands, please just put questions into the Q&A or into the chat, and we will try to get to you. But I think we should try to answer a few of these, or there are some other questions. One is, we were talking about the Haas sisters, which I think could be answered, and it's from Linda, and it says, how many are the Haas sisters, and are they able to come to the US for some of your shows?
There's 25, and yes, at the Cooper Hewitt, we brought 5 women with us, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, it was great, and like hopefully more in the future. But yeah, so far we brought 5, which was a really cool experience.
Great. And so another question is from Ronnie Oppenheim, who some of us know pretty well, is that she would like to hear more about your experience and what you did at Anderson Ranch, or what you did there, or what else you created and why.
Yeah, we go to Anderson Ranch a lot, actually, and Niki taught a wood carving class there. I have taught drawing, and I will actually this summer. I'm teaching another drawing class. What else? Oh, Nancy. Hi, Nancy.
Yeah, I mean, Anderson Ranch is amazing. Are you kidding? It's like a oasis of art, artists and art capability, and you can cross different types of mediums like all in one space. It's insane. Like we would go, you get hosted, you're like living on the spot. You get to teach people and also make your own work. It's just like, I don't quite know how to describe it other than that. Like it's a total art making oasis. It's unbelievable, and it's cool because there's very different ideas, very different techniques, and you're in Aspen, which is like one of the most beautiful places on earth. So it's not there's like there's nothing wrong with it. It's the best experience ever. It was so fun.
So, but Nancy's asking, what is the most fun piece of work that you guys have ever created, or the most satisfying?
Oh,
that's an easy one to answer, right?
Yeah, there's just like different things to each one. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like
honestly, one of my favorites is on the screen now, and it's that fruit stripe rug, because it kind of hits all the points for me, which is like childhood reference because it's roadkill from Texas, but it's a zebra, but it's like a gay zebra, and it's based on the fruit stripe gum zebra. And I don't know, it's a rug, but it's also a wall hanging. So to me, that's pretty good.
Pretty perfect.
Yeah.
I know it's cheesy. I can't choose. There's like just no way I could choose a piece. It's like it's super fun to make something and to like let it go and move on to the next thing. I'm always like a little bit dissatisfied with what we've just made, and I'm ready to just like make something else. You know what I mean? Which I think is like it's like a good motivation. And then years later, I'll look back and I'll be like, oh, I'm actually pretty into that thing. But the moment I finish it, I'm like, always like, next thing, So.
As you can see, we're starting to get some more questions in journal about your work and design or art and sculpture and making things available to people and other things. But I think I want to try to roll that into a question that Sarah and I thought about, and maybe we can put the two together and see how far this takes us towards the end. What has the pandemic taught you about yourselves, or where you'll be going with your work?
That's my favorite question.
I mean, a lot.
Yeah,
totally. I think to really not take for granted what we do. We're so lucky, and so like, travel has been a really big part of our work, and like getting to meet people from different places and like taking different perspectives. I think it's also taught us that, I mean, look, like when the pandemic, I'm not so terrified by the pandemic at this point. I think most people sort of like understand the way that they can interact with it and live their lives. But in the beginning, it was like completely disorienting. And to be able to go to the studio and like I would put my headphones on and I was just working opposite hours of like when my son would be asleep. So I would just be there, you know, from like 8 p.m. till 3 in the morning and just like headphones on and sculpting. And I literally felt like I was visiting another planet, you know? And when you're on a planet that's like wrecked by this virus, to be able to feel like you're completely somewhere else was pretty awesome. And I think that's what it taught me about our work, that like the connection to other people, the like just how lucky we are to like make a living doing it, and then also how lucky we are to like create our own reality inside of it is like pretty special. Not everybody gets to create their own reality inside of their job, and that's kind of all Simon and I do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just pretty cool.
It's really cool. We're so lucky, and you know, I think like making art and even if it's like knitting or something, it's a really healthy escape, and it keeps you, whatever your craft is, it's such a good thing to foster and to have that during a time like this, when like mental health and just stress and everything is difficult. It's been good for me to like have beads, or I started to crochet, and like, I don't know, that takes my mind off of everything. Everything is totally okay. So I have a renewed appreciation for craft, particularly in its ability to improve mental health, and I have a new appreciation for people, and just not taking for granted that. Because I think all of us are used to like going to dinners and art fairs and things where it's like one after the other an event. And sometimes it gets exhausting. And I remember being like, oh my God, I can't go to another event. And that is like, that statement is just high privilege. At this point, I'm like, please take me to that event. I miss that so much. So I'm just excited for that again.
I think like too, like while I'm sculpting things, I was like sculpting things, hugging each other and drawing things, touching each other. And it's like just the realization that we get to swirl around inside of our work and face the things that maybe like sitting down and vocalizing and talking about the way you're feeling is difficult to put things into words. At least it is for me. But then to sit down and sculpt it and just be like, oh, well, I know exactly how I feel now and like what I'm looking for. And sometimes you can say like, I miss hugging people. That doesn't really do it. But if I sit there and I'm like sculpting two things, hugging each other for like 15 hours over 2 days, I almost get to like have that experience of hugging somebody for 15 hours because that's all I'm thinking about. So it's just like, it's a beautiful escape. We get to think about how we're feeling and explore that all the time. And like, that's just a major luxury to get to do that. And that wasn't really like, the main function of our job wasn't taken away, which is pretty cool. So it's like we're pretty self-sufficient in that, like we just dive into our fantasy and go. And we're lucky that we have that. We always have. So, you know, I don't know, we'll keep doing that for sure.
Do you keep wanting to affect as many people as possible, like working and experiencing something like the Haas Sisters or other such projects that you guys have taken on? Is that going to be a continuing growing theme in the work?
Definitely. I mean, it's like we've noticed, I mean, right now, like the economy tanked and the art market is not doing great. We're not doing great as a result. So that's been one of the major like sad moments for us is having to not permanently, but just to put a hold on having a lot of people in our studio or working with a lot of people. And working with the Haas sisters is very social and you have to be in the same room with them and all that kind of stuff is on hold. So yes, definitely we want more of that. That's something I really, really miss. Like it's kind of the biggest privilege of our job is getting to work with groups of people that have a different perspective and different experiences.
Well, in some way there's a big opportunity because the world needs a lot of healing right now. you know, and like that's kind of, you know, that's kind of like what we do, is try to like find those opportunities. So there's a lot of fodder for, you know, for making the kind of work that I think that we really enjoy making. So like 100% we're going to be working with more people in the future. That's kind of what we do. Like we're for us, like we collaborate. That's like what we're collaborators. We are with ourselves in our own practice, and then with other people, and 100% we'll do that. Yeah.
So maybe to start to bring it to a little bit of a close, we can maybe you guys can talk about, or the saying of why you made the flatware like this, or with the hands on it or something.
Yeah. Well, it's a zombie field, right? No, I'm kidding. It's like these all go into a case, you know, and like the fork end goes down, and then the hand is sticking out of it. Oh, there you go. So you reach down and you say, "What's up, zombie?" And you pick out the fork, and it's just kind of the same thing. It's like you take the idea of a zombie or a witch or a devil or whatever the evil thing is, and you just make it funny, and you go like, "Here, I'm gonna like give you a hand, pull you out of your sludge, and then you're gonna give me a hand eating my thing." It's just kind of like it's the same idea of just reaching across the boundary and trying to take away the border, I guess, if that makes sense. You and the zombie are buddies now because you have a function for each other, if that makes sense.
And then maybe since
we wanted to end on this remarkable tub.
That's a good spot to end.
It's a good spot to end.
Yeah, big old bathtub.
That's where I want to be. Right?
That's where I want to be.
And I really want to be there tonight.
Yeah. That's just a big hug, man. That was fun to make, you know? I just think like the cool thing is too, it was this big in Marquette, and then you know, do a 3D scan and blow it up and like get it rolling. That was a cool thing. Also, it's like, it's a bathtub, it's a sculpture. I don't know what it is. It's like, it's everything. It's a succubus.
It's definitely a bathtub, but as it's installed, it's not even like there isn't a faucet and there's no hole in it in its permanent spot. So it's more of a like a monument.
I think the accomplishment once again is you've taken a material that we look at as really rectilinear and hard as a material, and you've now made it almost soft, like it isn't. It almost is like maybe it isn't stone. Mm-hmm. And you've added a quality of maybe wanting to add touch or feel, of attracting.
Yeah, I mean, we grew up
intimacy.
Oh, for sure, intimacy, and I mean, there's people form connections with objects all the time, whether it's a computer or like, you know, or like the specific wallet or whatever it is, and that's what we want to foster. And because we grew up carving stone, we know what it feels like, and we know there's like a surface that's called, we hone it in a way instead of polishing it, where it feels kind of like skin. And then these are the size of these like knobs on this thing are very much like, it just feels it's large, but it's kind of a human scale, and it feels very intimate and it feels very sensual. So it's more about the experience of being in that tub and feeling those knobs while you're in the tub. It would be really wonderful. So that's kind of what this is about.
So I think that's a great place to end this and say thank you to everybody and to the community that listened in, and for everyone that cares about the arts and culture to keep it growing and moving, and that we get to hopefully keep doing great things for people that want to see more great things. So thanks for everything you guys have done with us and for everyone else in the world. And same to you with Sarah for giving us and mixing all of the arts together in the same way. This is like one of my happiest like Friday evenings in a while, for the importance of sharing and caring.
Mm-hmm. Me too. And thank you both.
Thank you both. That was so fun.
Yeah, so fun. Thanks, everyone.
Take it easy, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
That was really good.
It came out good.
Yeah.
And it recorded, and you can give all the stats and stuff out later.
Yeah. So all of that's in the Zoom cloud. So I'm gonna edit. I'll have to edit the video and everything, and then it's good.
Okay, good. Done.
Awesome. That was a good talk.
Thanks.
Yay.
Glad I did one finally.
Yeah, and now you know how to host it too.
Yeah, I guess so. Thanks, Kat.
You're welcome. That was good, right? You got it?
Yeah, that was good.
I didn't see either of these problems. I just ran the gas.
Okay. Yeah, that was good.
Marlon, give you the rundown.
He did. Yeah. And I'm fine. I mean, I think we just have to make sure he knows where the walking lines are.
You want that in the drawing shop, and I'll just
Yeah, I think when he's here, he's just like, I'm going to do a little exploration anyway, but it sounds like we're going to be more than walking people in there.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. And I gave you the run-through of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to.
You got to let myself out.
Yeah, here's an active part.
Okay. So he's good to go for the weekend.
Yeah, so Ruby set that up just for the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And then he has Excel. So
Can you let him know, since I know that we have, got a call from the one from last weekend, when Marlon was here, let Theo know that if he puts any plastic down or anything like that, or paint anything, if he sets the alarm at night, the heater might, cause the motion detector to go off. And he shouldn't leave anything that can flash around.
Oh, okay.
Plastic.
Yeah, that's something.
You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
The heater blow a lot of air, and if I get the arm left some plastic on it or something, and it
That makes sense. Yeah, I like it. You're always
I know I'm changing it.
Oh, I like to do a half one thing.
No, that's good. That's good. I'm waiting on it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you are. Which one?
It's a patio stuff. The same one.
The one you have?
Not the one I have, the other one.
Okay.
But find some time. After the facility. Yeah. All right, I'm ready to go. Well, nice weekend.
You too, Evan. Hey, Kayla.
Hey, you're still on the Zoom call.
Holy crap. Okay, thanks.
Hey.
Am I off now?
Yeah.
That's weird.
I got a phone call from somebody saying that you were still on, and just to let me know, to tell you.
What are they still doing? I saw all the people chiming off. I actually turned it off. I must have been on as a regular. I mean, I must have been.
Did you press leave meeting?
Yes. I shut the whole thing down.
Huh. Well.
No, I'm still on it. Oh, there we go.